this time every Saturday morning to be our host, our back room facilitator. So those of you who are joining in first time, we want you to make sure you're looking in the feeds. If you got a question, you can put it there. If you want to know more about the ministry, you can look there. For there's the link, which is www.theplaceofpossibilities.com. Anything you want to know, you can go to that page. In addition, as we move throughout to this morning's teaching, I pray that you will be involved. We want to have some interaction. It's Saturday school. You're not here by detention, but you are here because of your intention. And so this month, I've been dealing with the topic of the science of getting rich. And I'm using as a source, one of the source documents, the book by Wallace D. Wattles, and that's spelled Wattles. And the book is entitled The Science of Getting Rich, Attracting Financial Success Through the Creative Thought Process. This is the secret behind the secret. Well, I am Greg, also known as Asar, your facilitator for this session and every Saturday morning. And so I hope that as you tune in, not only on this morning, but mornings to come, that you will find value in these teachings. So I'm taking some of the teachings that have been around for quite some time, and we're diving into them, reinterpreting them through the lens of the current time called now. Um, I am a teacher. What I mean by that, my calling, when you study the scriptures, I'm a Christian by my religious orientation. And in Ephesians 4, it tells you he gave some apostles, prophets, teachers, evangelists. He says it's a fivefold ministry. He gave some apostles, some prophets, some teachers, some apostles, prophets, evangelists, yes, pastors, and teachers. That's the fivefold ministry. And I started my ministry many years ago as a teacher. And I'm not talking about teaching from the perspective of an individual who has matriculated through the traditional schools of higher learning and gotten your bachelor's degree in education, which I do have my bachelor's degree in adult education and my master's in counseling psychology. But I'm talking about the gifting of teaching. And so what I've decided to do every Saturday morning is to take something that has been written or have been communicated throughout the ages and dive into it. Sometimes it'll be the Bible. Most times it'll be a book or a source document that has some critical information that once it's understood and you begin to apply it in your life, you'll see the fruit of those teachings. So Saturday school is very intentional. It's not meant to be a detention in the sense that you've done something wrong. And it's recorded, and you can find it out on our YouTube channels. Oasis Spiritual Center has a YouTube channel. So last week we dealt with there is a science of getting rich. We talked about also it is your right to be wealthy, right to have riches. And today I want to look at the first principles in the science of getting rich. The first principles in the science of getting rich. I like even when I read the scriptures, I have something I call the law of first mention. So when I'm reading about a particular subject or doing research about something from the biblical aspect, I usually look for the first time it's mentioned. Because when you understand the law of first mention, you understand the truest and the purest form of what that particular thought, idea, principle, or the is meaning. Well, what was the etymology behind it? What created it? So this morning we're looking at the first principle in the science of getting rich, and I hope you got your pens, your paper. And this is chapter 4, actually, in the book that I'm teaching from. And he starts off by saying that thought is the only power. But let me back up. V, what were some of the responses we had to the question? The question was, and I don't know if you typed it in the feed, but the question was, what is getting in the way of you amassing, attracting, getting or have wealth and riches? What is getting in the way of you having riches? So let's look and see what some of the responses is. Just go ahead, type a response in there. There's no wrong answer, but there definitely is a right answer, which I will share with you shortly. V, we have anything out there? Okay, she must have stepped.
Nothing at the moment.
Okay.
Oh, Courtney Bates just said mindset.
Mindset. Okay. Anybody else got some things that what's getting in the way of you amassing wealth and riches? You said something earlier, V. What was that you said?
Courtney Bates typed in mindset, and that's all we have out right now.
And
Nothing
then
on Facebook.
You had said you may have been joking, but you said perhaps children.
Oh, absolutely. Children definitely are barriers when it comes to being wealthy and being rich. You know, they have a lot of responsibility, and that's connected to my wealth, my richness.
Good. So I want you guys
I was sort of joking, but there's honesty in that for sure.
And I'm looking for that. And I want you guys who are out there in Facebook land, those of you who are on the Zoom, in the Zoom room, let's participate this morning. It's only a matter of typing in one thing. Okay, if you're not rich right now, what do you think the reason is? What is getting in the way of you being rich? And when I'm talking rich this morning, I'm talking specifically about having money, a lack of money. What is behind that? So think about that, and I want you guys to really know. Somebody, Cheryl says, did not know the path. Okay, so she says that her financial situation was impacted by not knowing the path. Okay, good. Anybody else want to chime in before we move forward? Okay, and I'm going to move forward for the sake of time, but I'm really imploring you all to let's make this a interactive engagement. Don't come out here to gaze. Don't come out here as a voyeur. Come as a true participant. So the answer is thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. That is what I want you to take away this morning, that your thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. Now, that's how he starts this chapter, and I'm resonating with that. So the stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks. Everything that is made by a substance which thinks. So do I have somebody out there that can find John chapter 1? And I would like to come out of the NIV version. So if somebody can find John chapter 1, and when you have it, raise your hand, and the facilitator, my producer, will have you bring that forward. So I would like somebody to find that, and then I want to hear that. So it's the stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks. A thought of form is this substance produces the form. All right, we got a couple hands. Somebody got that. Can you let them in?
Looks like, ooh.
Okay, I don't know if you have a bad feed this morning, V.
For us?
Yeah, okay, so I thought I saw some hands show up that they had found John 1 from the NIV. If somebody had that.
I see Courtney Bates' hand is up and she's unmuted.
Okay, good. Courtney, did you want to share that, read that for me? Okay, I can't hear you there.
You can't hear me?
Now I can, yeah.
Okay, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Keep on going, next verse.
Okay. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without nothing was made that has been made.
Awesome. So
in him, okay.
Go ahead. Did you have something else?
No, I think verse 4 was next.
Okay, just as so verses 1 through 3 is what she read, and I want you all to take some time and to grab that after the teaching sometime this week, and you will find that there are some nuggets in it. So in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and it goes on to say that without this word, and we have historically in the Christian paradigm, in traditional Christianity, we say this word was Jesus, and that without Jesus, nothing that exists came into existence. So that whole set of scriptures really have their origin inside of a Kemetic or the Nile Valley spiritual system. When you understand the netters like Jehuti, which is the a representative aspect. Jesus Christ is a manifested representative aspect of the form Tehuti or Dejuti. You may hear it, or also known as Thoth, which represents the creative principle of the spoken word. And so you have that creative aspect to yourself. But before a word is ever spoken, the word is in the form of a thought. Can you hear me? Can you feel me? Do you see what I'm saying this morning? So I'm saying to you that everything that is to be created, will ever be created, first is created in the imaginative faculty of the mind, or in the position called the thought. Now, the thought is what we call formless substance. And the moment you take a thought and you image it, you bring form to it. Now you create a electromagnetic field that automatically pulls everything that is necessary, all the ingredients into play, that thing begins to manifest. Now, he goes on and he says, original substance moves according to its thought. Every form and process you see in nature is the visible expression of form, and every form, it says, it's a visible expression of a thought in the original substance. So example, when you see a tree, it's the manifested substance of the original thought, which came forth from creation, and now you see it as its manifestation. As it thinks of a form, that's source, yourself. As you think of a form, it takes that form. As it, which is source, thinks of a motion, it makes the motion. That is the way all things are created. All things are created by thought. Okay, we live in a thought world, and this world is part of a thought universe. Now, everything is about thought. So thought is critical, is crucial to the creative process. Big mistake we make. The word of God tells us, labor not to get wealth, or labor not to get anything. Okay, because in the labor you are using physicalness. Now there comes a point where the physicalness plays into, but that's after you're putting the cart before the horse when you are laboring to get wealth or riches. And many people are laboring to get wealth, but it starts with a creative idea. It starts with trusting that things would align for you, and that the steps of the righteous, which is you, are ordered by the Lord, by the law, and it will get you to where you need to be to be a vessel through which it can work through, and to be in position to receive whatever it is you desire. He goes on. Is there any feedback right there? Any questions to what I've just stated? Awesome. Okay. The thought of a moving universe extended throughout the formless substance. The thinking stuff is resulting from that thought. It took the form of systems and planets and continues to maintain that form. So our universe that we have, and the Bible speaks of it, that it's all came from a chaotic place. It says in the beginning was the one in Genesis 1 and 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and it goes on to tell you. So it talks about a cosmological beginning that came out of chaos. And so everything comes from undifferentiated, the undifferentiated state is a state where things are formless and can be considered as chaos. Okay, so the field, if we were to be able to really look into the field or the kingdom of heaven, the field it appears as chaotic because it has all the substance that is necessary to create whatever it is we desire, but it's in its undifferentiated state. Now, let me help you understand. An undifferentiated state, example, when you have flour, when you have eggs, and when you have all those things and you mix them all up into a bowl, they go from a differentiated state. You have an egg, you have flour, you have vanilla extract, you have butter, and then you want to put it all into a bowl and you mix it up thoroughly, and it becomes this mass. Is undifferentiated. No longer can you see the egg, no longer can you see the flour, no longer can you see all the things that you mixed up. So that's like what the universe is. It's in an undifferentiated state. But when you mix it all up, put it in a pan, put it in the oven, let the conditions be proper, then voila, after a period of time, it comes forth as a cake, a pie, whatever you had in your mind's eye for that thing to become. Now it's differentiated. Okay, it's one thing, but all is one because everything that made up that cake is in existence in the cake, and it is all one. So that's a way of looking at the undifferentiated state and the differentiated state. So he says, thinking substance takes the form of its thought and moves according to the thought. So your thoughts become things. Your thoughts are powerful. Holding the idea of a circling system of suns and the world, it took the form of these bodies and moved them accordingly. So here's something important. He says, holding an idea. Many of us do not hold ideas, thoughts long enough. Our thoughts are fleeting. The word says a double-minded person is unstable in all his ways. That means there's some instability there, so you don't get that thing to take shape and take form. So that's a powerful thought to have, that many of the things you desire it is God's good desire to give them to you, or sources, the universe will provide them to you, but you don't hold the intention long enough. You let too many things get your attention and it moves you off of your intention. We're going to come back to that. All right, I'm going to take a break before we move forward. Is there any response this morning? Are there any things I need to circle back on before I move into my next thought?
Courtney Bates just said we have to hold on to an idea. Well, yes. I have a hand up by Faye, so let's get Faye in here. Good morning, Faye.
Welcome to Saturday School, Faye.
Oh, she has to unmute herself. Are you there, Faye? She's got her hand. Maybe she has a question or it's by mistake.
I was just about to type. Anyhow, I was just going to comment on what Pastor just said about holding that intention long enough. I have been guilty of not holding certain intentions long enough. And, sometimes I come back and I try to figure out, where did I go wrong? Where did I drop the ball? But the bottom line is you have to stay in that vortex.
Yes.
You have to, despite the distractions.
So she said something key there. She says you have to stay in the vortex. You have to hold that intention, and you can't allow things or distractions to get in the way. And that's the big, distractions are the realities of what's showing up. The distractions are the commercials that are showing up on the television or through the airwaves, and those things can cause you to shift your attention, your intention to what you holds your current attention. And so that's why you have to be very careful what you're listening to, what you're watching, and know when there is a intruding thought or an intruding idea. Now, every idea is not a God idea. So a good idea or a good opportunity that just presents itself may not be a God idea, which I mean by a God idea is the idea that you held or that you intended. And so it's moving it out the way. So that's very important, what Faye is saying, and what we had stated to us by Courtney, that we have to hold the intention. Now, how do we hold our intentions? First of all, sometimes you must write your intentions down. So that way, when you have competing things that compete for your attention, then you can take it back to your intention. And you affirm the thing that you're intending. That's very key. So many of us don't have what we desire to have because we're not holding the space for it. We're not holding the intention. We are not trusting. We are operating inside of I want it right here, right now. Even though it's already right here, right now, we want to see it. We want to touch it. We want to engage it. But we have to know this, that all things come in its proper season. When you mix that cake up, all the ingredients, you don't just begin to eat it. You can, it'll make you sick, but you want to put it in the oven so that the other part of the process takes place, that it comes to fruition in what you really want it to be. Likewise, don't get out in front of, don't be anxious. The word says, be anxious for nothing. But in all things, it tells us what we need to do when we are holding an intention. We rejoice in that thing. We do some very intentional things. Now, all those centuries may be required.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Courtney Bates just said, visualize, write it down, speak it. That was good.
Yeah. So you imagine it. You get clear on it. You take it into a meditation that it can become real clear and succinct. Then you write it down, or you take it into meditation. And as you come out of meditation, you write it down, because there'll be times where you just pass through it by affirming it. If you affirm what you have written down, you are affirming, or you are reminding yourself of the things you're holding the space for. That way you won't be caught off guard. It's like having a calendar. When you know what you're supposed to do today, when your friend shows up and says, let's go for a walk in the park, but you know at 1 o'clock, I have an important call, you won't miss that call because you are aware of what this day holds for you and what you are intending to do. So it's the same way when you're creating something, you got to be very intentional. I want you all to know that every thought of form held in thinking substance causes the creation of that form, but always, or at least generally, along the lines of growth and action already established. So if there's some things that are already established on how, like we live in a linear world, so some of the things that we are seeking to create will manifest through the linear world. Example, if you seek to have a PhD, the processes is already in place. So you're not just going to wake up with the actual PhD on your wall. You go to sleep with the idea. You go to sleep with the thought that I am a PhD. But you must also, in the material world, go through the matriculation process from grammar school to high school to college to graduate school, completing your dissertation, and then one day you walk across the stage. But you don't walk across the stage 4 years from now, you walk across the stage right here, right now. So you begin to see yourself, you begin to hold that intention, and as you hold the intention and you operate, you see yourself, you're in the walking across the stage, it helps you stay focused. It helps you hold fast to the desired thing, even though you may have to take a course somewhere in that time frame that is giving you some challenges. But because you continue to see yourself in your mind's eye as the PhD candidate or whatever, you stay the course and you get through this thing. Now, a couple things I want to share. Uh, if the thought of a let me go. No thought of form can be impressed upon the original substance without causing creation that forms it. So every thought that you think impresses itself upon the universe, and the universe hears the verse and it brings it into existence. A human being is a thinking center and can originate thought. You are a thinking center and you can originate thought. All the forms that a person fashions with his hands must first emerge from his thoughts. So everything you do, everything you want to create with your hands, first emerges as a thought. A painter begins to paint on the canvas with his or her hands what she sees in her mind's eye, or carves out that block of clay what it sees in its mind's eye. All the forms that you fashion must first start here. You cannot shape a thing until it has thought that thing. You cannot shape something, you cannot create something until you've thought that thing. Here's the situation. Many individuals have chaos in their lives because they are not intentional in their thinking. So whatever passes through their mind holds it for a moment. They think on that thing and that thing begins to manifest. And that's why your life appears to be in disarray. And so far, man has confined his efforts. You and I, we have confined our efforts wholly to the work of our hands. We have applied manual labor to the world of form. But the word tells us, labor not. It doesn't say that we are not supposed to work, but it says that that should not be the first principle, or it should be not the first step. Okay, it first starts with getting clear in your mind's eye, imagining the thing you want to be, do, or have. He goes on, he says, seeking to change or modify already existing forms. Okay, here, let me back up. He says, man has applied manual labor to the world of forms, seeking to change or modify already existing forms. Man has never thought of trying to cause the creation of new forms by impressing his thoughts upon formless substance. So instead of trying to change the things that have manifested, the matter, start changing the essence of the thing that creates matter, the substance behind it, the formless substance. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? There's a formless substance that you use to create the new situation in your life. Don't labor to change the current life in a physical way, but if we can get to the place where we change all things from the invisible realm to the visible realm, not trying to change the visible realm, but change the invisible realm. Make sense? So when a person has a thought form, he takes material from the forms of nature and makes an image of the form which is in his mind. He has so far made little or no effort to cooperate with the formless intelligence. So when you just go get the wood and you begin to build, then you're using what is already in existence to create that which you imagine. Okay, you're not working with the Father in creating something that is not in existence. You have not dreamed that, okay, it says he has not dreamed that he can, quote, do what he sees the Father doing. And Jesus said, the Christ man stated, I do no thing except I see the Father do it. I do nothing unless I hear. So we have to learn to tune in, tap into that intuitive part of who we are versus tuning in and tapping into that intellectual part that we are. Yeah, does Faye have something? If not, you make sure you go ahead and mute her back out. Did somebody have something this morning? Faye, did you have something else?
No, I just sent a note to request the name of the book.
Okay, good. We'll circle back. The name of the book that I'm dealing with this morning is The Science of Getting Rich Attracting Financial Success Through the Creative Thought. And it's written by Wallace D. Wattles. This is a very
Unmuted. It
old,
looked like it was, but we also are being asked.
no, were you saying something, V?
Exactly what Faye was saying, the title of the book.
Okay, yeah, the title of the book is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, okay? Originally published in 1910. So this is how whole old this stuff is, timeless. So make sure everybody's go ahead and mute it out. So if you have a comment, after you make your comment, make sure you mute yourself back out so that way you don't pop up on the screen unintentionally. We're going to be very intentional. So he goes on. He says, so far, man has made little or no effort to cooperate with the formless intelligence that is to work with the Father. He has not dreamed that he can do this. So do what? Do what he sees his Father doing, or what he sees Source doing, what he sees the divine intelligence doing. Man reshapes and modifies existing forms currently by manual labor. He has not considered the question of whether he could produce things from the formless substance by communicating through his thought. So that's what this teaching is about this morning. Not dealing with what you have in your hand as much as what you have access to in your mind. He in this writing, he went on to propose that that man may do so, and to prove that any man or woman can do this, and to show us how. He says the first step will be to lay down 3 fundamental propositions. So this morning, with the next 30 minutes, we want to lay those 3 fundamental propositions down that you will begin to exercise to determine whether or not this works, if you work it. First, he says, we assert that there is one original formless substance from which all things is made. Well, the word tells us, Moses said, for the Lord thy God is one. That is, the universe, the substance is one. All seemingly many, okay, he says all the seemingly many elements are only different presentations of one element. Just like you and I, we are different presentations of one element that we call God, that we know is source, okay? One source with many manifestations. That's why they made the mistake, the Europeans who entered into the Nile Valley culture and began to see the images, they mistakenly said that they worshiped many animals or gods. They did not. They just had the understanding of the manifestation of source in a myriad of ways, okay? All the many forms found in organic and inorganic nature are only different shapes made from the same stuff. We're all made from the same stuff. That's why this thing about this race thing, black people, white people, whatever, we're all made from the same stuff with different manifestations, okay? And this stuff is thinking stuff. So we all are the result of a thought. God thought about us and it created us, okay? So thinking stuff is the stuff you use to create the world you desire. A thought that is held in this thinking stuff produces the form of the thought. Thought and thinking substance produces shapes. A human being is a thinking center capable of original thought. If a person can communicate his thought to original thinking substance, he can create the creation or formation of things he think about. So let's summarize this. He says, there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspace of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. A person can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thought upon this formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks to be created. Now, he goes on, he says, he can prove this. He says, I can prove these statements by logic and experience, reasoning back from the phenomena of form and thought. I come to one original thinking substance, and reasoning forward from this thinking substance, I come to the individual's power to cause the formation of the thing that he thinks. By experiment, I find this reasoning to be true, and this is my strongest proof. If one person who reads this book gets rich by doing what I tell him or her to do, that is evidence in support of my claim. Furthermore, if every person who does what I tell him to do does get rich, that is positive proof until someone goes through the process and fails. The theory is true until the process fails. That it is. The theory is true until the process fails. And this process will not fail because every person who does exactly what you're going to be informed to do will get rich. He says, I have said that an individual gets rich by doing things in a certain way. We think you get rich by going to work. We think you get rich by having employees or a multiple cash streams. In order to do so, to get rich, a person must become able to think in a certain way. It's not do things in a certain way, but you have to think in a certain way. A person's way of doing things is a direct result of the way he thinks about that thing. So we want to first principle to be is to get our thoughts right, get your mind right. Let's have a process of thinking that moves in front of doing. To do things in a way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. And many of us do not think the way we want to think. Many of us has been taught to think inside of the paradigm in the world in which we live. But the word says we are in this world, but not of this world. What we have to do is understand that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and that we should always know that we're spiritual beings made from spiritual matter. And so we don't create from matter to matter, but we create from spiritual to matter. That's all that matters if you understand that. So to do things in a way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step towards getting rich. This is the first step to getting health. This is the first step to walking inside of wealth. To think what you want to think is to think truth. Notice that truth and belief are not one and the same. Sometimes your truth can be predicated inside of proper beliefs. But for most people, we operate inside of beliefs that are not substantiated, or neither are they true. Religion is based on belief. Okay, spirituality is based on truth and is based on faith. Faith is predicated upon operating the principles, learning that they work, and now your faith is in the principle. Like I have faith in sitting on a chair that I see with 4 legs. If I see a leg missing, I know it's not built on the proper principle. So I don't sit on that chair. Okay, to think what you want to think is truth, regardless of the appearance. So regardless of what shows up, regardless of what the appearance, you still hold the thought of what the truth is. Every person has the natural and inherent power to think what he wants to think, but it requires for more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggestive by appearance. It's much more easier to think the thought that has been suggested to you. It's much so easier to think in the reality of the real that is showing up. Okay, if you are sick, experiencing the expression of sickness, it's easier to think sickness. If you're experiencing poverty, it is easier to think poverty thoughts. So it's going to take some work. It's going to take some undoing. So to think according to what is appearing, what is apparent is easy. To think truth regardless of appearance is laborious. and it requires the expenditure of more power than any work a person has to perform. But if you expend that power doing that, you won't exert a lot of physical power to ultimately bring that thing into manifestation. There's no labor from which most people shrink away from than that of sustained consecutive thought. We shrink away from being intentional in our thoughts. We shrink away from holding the thought of health. It's so much easier to drift back over into the lane of this is what it is. But we have to hold in our mind's eye. We have to hold in our conversation what is we desire to be versus what may be showing up actually. Now, every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind which observes it. Everything you see produces a corresponding form in the mind that observes it. Now, there's a story in the Bible about Laban and his uncle, and it talks about how he had labored for his uncle, and he was going to give his uncle, he wanted to leave. And so he didn't want to take anything that belonged to his uncle. So he says, here's what I'll do. I'll only take the spotted livestock. And he knew the law of looking. And so what he did was when the animals would come to eat every morning in the troughs or drink from the river, he planted, or he brought them to a place in the river where they would see the speckled plants. So as they ate, they were looking at the speckled plant. As they reproduced, they were looking at the speckled plants. And guess what happened? The speckled livestock outnumbered it was natural to be born without any blemish. But because the law of the look was understood, he used it. So you have to be careful. What you're looking at impresses on you. Does that make sense to you guys? When we look at what has happened in the world over the last 2 years, everybody began to look at Wuhan, or everyone began to look upon the numbers that was increasing. As the more we looked at the numbers, the more the numbers spread, and the more people were impacted by this virus. Now, look what's happening now. All of a sudden, the pandemic is taking a reversal. I believe it's because we have such a high belief in, one, the government, two, big pharma or pharmaceuticals. And when these particular antigens were created, we believe so much in it, most people do. And so with that belief in it, it automatically began to say, if I take this shot, the no placebo effect, it will diminish the possibility of me getting COVID, or it will just wipe this thing out. So the government now is pushing this whole conversation about trying to get as many people vaccinated. Now, if you've gotten vaccinated, that's your choice. I'm not here to rake you over the coals. I'm not here to say that your belief system is less than. You did what you felt was best for you, and guess what? You do that. Now, so he goes on in here, he says, every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind which observes it. This can only be prevented by holding the thought of truth. So you have to, if somebody's talking about sickness and disease, you have to hold the thought of truth. I mean, the thought of health, wellness, wholeness. But what happens is your placeholder for truth was filled with the reality of the appearance and the conversation, what is going on. I see it every day when I go visit the church last Sunday. The preacher was, you're supposed to be a peddler of truth. You are standing in a pulpit spraying the mic. You're saying that the appearance of things is more real than the truth of the matter, that you are holding the space for wholeness and health. So we say one thing and we do another, but what you do tells me exactly what you believe. Now, he says to look upon the appearance of disease, check this out, will produce the form of disease in your own mind. So we have to be careful that to look upon is he means to gaze, to be stuck in looking at that thing. He says to look upon the appearance of disease will produce the form of disease in your mind and ultimately in your body. Stars in your mind, hits your body. Instead, you must hold the thought of truth, which is that there is no disease, there is no dis-ease. But the reality is, you allow the conversation of common folk to displace your truth. Now, your truth become their truth, and you have the same experiences that they have. Disease is only an appearance, it's a possibility. And the reality is health. So your reality is health, and your reality becomes your possibility because you're focusing on health. To look upon the appearance of poverty in the same way will produce corresponding forms in your own mind. Instead, you must hold to the truth that there is no poverty, there's only abundance. But if you're living in poverty, that will be difficult because all you will see is poverty. So that's why it's important that you take a break, get away from. I encourage my children, though they may not be making tons of money, move to places that represents prosperity. Many of you saw on my Facebook page this past week a house, a palatial place that we lived in for a good 6 years. And I intentionally moved to that place that was costing me something like $4,000 a month because I wanted my children to be in opulence. I wanted them to feel what opulence felt like. And right now, my children are set on opulence. But now, some of my children have not gotten the principle, the first principle of getting rich. They are laboring. They are getting the bag. But there's a way to get wealth, to get riches, to sustain it that does not require you to have a degree, does not require for you to have multiple cash streams. All those things are good to have, but it all starts with your thought. And the thought is there is only abundance. Right here, right now. Say that with me. There is only abundance.
There is only abundance.
Yes.
Ooh, that's good.
Awesome. So it requires power to think health and wealth when surrounded by appearance of disease or lack, or to think riches when in the midst of the appearance of poverty. But it requires, okay, he says, but he who acquires this power, she who acquires this power becomes a mastermind and can conquer fear and can have whatever he or she desires. This power can only be acquired by getting hold of the basic fact that, okay, here's the basic fact, which is behind all appearances, that there is only one thinking substance from which and by which all things are made. My thoughts become things. And if the things that are in my life are not consistent with what I want to experience, I take ownership that I have been thinking, or I have been inside of stinking thinking. I have been thinking thoughts that does not produce after my desired kind. So we're just about finished. He says, we must grasp the truth that every thought held in this substance becomes a form that a person can impress his thoughts upon, so as to cause them to take form and become invisible. So look at the universe, look at the field as a substance that you impress the image in. And then the universe provides the substance to fill the mold, and that thing comes forth. That's powerful. When we realize this, we will lose all doubt and fear because we know that we can create what we want to create intentionally, deliberately. If you're talking about the contrast of there's not enough men in the world, then you're going to create situations where you're the last person standing without a man or without a woman. When you say there's no good jobs, then guess what? You won't get the job. When you say, I don't have what it takes, I don't have the degree, you won't get the job. But when you say that you will have that thing. All right, okay. When we realize we lose all doubt and fear, and because we know that we can create what we want to create, we can get what we want to have, and can become what we want to be. As a first step toward getting rich, you must believe the three fundamental statements given previously in this conversation. In order to emphasize them, let me repeat them right now. First one, okay? This is the first fundamental statement. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspace of the universe. That's step one. I mean, that's principle one. Okay. The second one was a thought in this substance produces the thing that is imagined by the thought. So the thought inside the quantum field, a thought inside the kingdom, produces the thing that is imagined. I want you to think about these. And the third one was a person can form things in his or her thought. And by impressing her thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing that she thinks about to be created. What is the formless substance? Source. So you must lay aside all other concepts of the universe than this monistic one, this one. You must dwell upon this until it is fixed in your mind and has become your habitual thought. Read these creed statements over and over again. Those three creed statements. Read them, listen to them over and over again. Fix every word upon your memory and meditate upon them until you firmly believe what they say. If doubt comes to you, cast it aside as a sin. The word sin means you missing the mark. It's not me, I'm going to hell. It means I'm missing the mark. Don't listen to arguments against this idea. Do not go to churches or to lectures where a contrary concept thing is taught or preached. That's what I want to say. That's why I'm so adamant against the church as we know it, because it is teaching things that are beliefs and not truths. That's what's the difference in the Oasis Spiritual Center for Divine, or the Oasis Spiritual Center for Divine Living. So do not read magazines or books which teach a different idea. The moment your alert goes off that this is different than the thought that I should be thinking, close it, shut it down, shut it off. You don't have to know what the numbers are as it pertains to how many people are getting COVID, because you hold the original thought of there's no disease. You don't have to know what the index of unemployment index is. You don't have to know what the poverty rate is, because you hold that you live in an abundant universe. Now, if you get mixed up in your faith, all your efforts will be in vain. You got to get clear. You got to let go of stuff. Do not ask why these things are true, nor speculate as to how they can be true. Simply trust and believe. The science of getting rich begins with the absolute absence or the absolute acceptance of faith. Faith and belief is not the same thing. Ultimately, your belief should align up with your faith. But for most of us, our beliefs are predicated upon things given to us, handed down to us, born into us, the cultural context in which we live. And we comport with them because we don't want to be the odd man out. But I'm saying that you got to, like Abraham, get away from your family, Family things, the familiar things you're familiar with. I'm not talking about your mother, your father, your sister, or brother. I'm saying get away from that which you are familiar with. Now, for some of you, I'm not familiar to you. So you can come towards me. The teachings that I'm teaching will bring life, will shed light, and will give you mastery. So I hope something was said this morning that has been uplifting and encouraging. And that's Saturday School for today. You see, I got my conscious cap on. That C stands for consciousness. Even though I'm a Cub fan, this is my conscious cap. And I hope you have one on too. So let us wrap up this morning. You're right at the top of the hour. We started a couple minutes afterwards. So I want to open up for questions or even ahas, or, just what this teaching has done for you in just hearing it. So let's open that up right now.
Of course, this was great. I'm going to come on screen because I do have a question. I apologize for my connectivity issues earlier. As a journalist, the covering COVID and covering the pandemic was very different for me. It was hard to have the faith that you're talking about and still call into the mayor's office and into the public department's office and get to know this. When working in this type of field, how do I turn off anything that contradicts?
Yes, you're frozen, but I think I got what you said. So you report world reality. That's what your
Put
job
into the chat. How do I represent the media? Okay, correct.
Okay, this is what you do. You make it your business to reset yourself. Irregardless of what you have shared, you go back to say, this is what my beliefs are. I mean, like after you write the article, you're writing it for whomever, then you come back, you say you have to make space throughout your day. Whenever you have communicated the realities of what is appearing, you're just reporting what is appearing in the reality for the world.
Right.
You have to come back and you have to affirm that that's the world. I'm in this world, but not of this world.
Whew.
I live in an absolute of abundance. I live in an absolute of where there is no disease. So your subconscious self, when it hears you writing these things, don't know whether you believe them or not. So you have to go back and reset your subconscious self when you know you've written things that are not consistent with what you believe as your truth.
That was really good. I struggle with that quite a bit, especially since COVID. It's a little different.
Okay,
Culture.
so here's what you can say. This is not my truth. This is what I am reporting as the reality, but it is not my truth. So then yourself can say, okay, that's not my truth. I'm not accepting this. And this is my reality. And this is what you are affirming and impressing. You can say, I am abundant. I am healthy. I rejoice in the uniqueness of my design, that I don't experience what the world experiences. Okay, because you know what, there's I'm not going to mention that. I'm not going to say that, but I just want to just leave it right there. Awesome. Is there anything else anybody want to share, or anything you see out there anybody want to state? Okay, I don't know. I believe I may have lost V. So let me take a look over here. I'm looking through the chat to see. I don't see anything there. I see amens by Tawana. So if you have something, just raise your hand. There's a place where you can raise your hand. Let me see here.
I am here. I'm sorry.
Okay, good. No problem. No problem. So do you see anything out there I need to address before we wrap
I do. I wanted to welcome Tawanda Lee because that's not a name that I see often. And into the question,
Okay. I see it. She says, when something happens and it's said that God did it And we say that it's a
And we say
blessing from
that, is
God.
that the case, or is it a form of a thought?
Okay, good.
Ooh.
Awesome. Let me answer that. I'm going to answer that live for you. And so here how it goes. There's world thinking, and then there's kingdom thinking. You are the God that creates the experience that you're having. Notice that's what we've been talking about this morning. It's sad that the world says when something appears to be good, God did it. When something appears to be bad, Satan did it. And sometimes people will say God did bad things, like God wiped out a whole island. And then that person would say God wiped that island out because that island was not in alignment with what his highest and greatest good was. That's a lie. That was just a natural event. God had nothing to do with that. Now, when we begin to take on the understanding of how powerful we are, the biggest fear that the biggest thing that most of us has to deal with is we don't know how powerful we are. When we get enough people with the same intention, you can change natural events. I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly. There's been meditative studies done where they've had enough people meditating at the same time, and it changed the violence quotient of a certain area. So the power of our minds, that has nothing to do with God. And then God will have conflicting, okay, the God I know and the God you know. Here's a good example. You got two teams playing. Let's say two Christian schools are playing. And they both, before the game, pray that God be on their side. So the team that loses could get upset and say, God is not on our side, or maybe we didn't pray hard enough. We have all these things we do because we haven't thought it through. God had nothing to do. The team that won was the most equipped team, or the team that won got them the breaks because they just knew they were going to win. Maybe they had imposed on themselves that they willed a win even when they shouldn't have won. So there's a lot of things that goes on. So that's a very good question, Tawanda. So when something happens and is said that God did it, first of all, you are the God that did it. And when we say that
No,
a
that's
blessing
right.
from God, you got to understand the blessing is free. God desire. It said it rains on the good as well as the bad. Okay, God accepts each of us as we are. Notice, you have some children. Anybody ever had a child that was always into something that you may have mislabeled him at times or her at times as a bad child, but you still fed that child. You still gave that child security. You still loved that child. So if we, being natural parents, can love wayward children, how much more can the Creator love us in spite of us? And it does. Your relationship with God is not performance-based. It's relational-based. I hope I answered that question, Tawanda. All right, good. V, anything else out there?
Nothing else, but I have to reiterate that you said you are the God that make it happen. And I just thought that was so good. What a great way to end this.
Yes, it is. And we're going to go more into it. So as we end this morning, we end like we always start. We end with Mind Power by James Brown. And for